Oh, who shall from this dungeon raise a soul enslaved so many ways, with bolts of bones that fetid stands, in feet and manacled in hands, here blinded with an eye, and there deaf with drumming of an air, a soul hung up as 'twere in chains of nerves and arteries and veins, tortured beside each other part, in a vain head and double heart.
Oh, who shall me deliver whole from bonds of this tyrannic soul, which stretched upright impales me so, that mine own precipice I go, and warms and moves this needless frame, a fever but could do the same, and wanting where its spite to try, has made me live to let me die, a body that could never rest, since this ill spirit it possessed.
What magic could me thus confine within another's grief to pine, where whatsoever it complain, I cannot feel the pain, and all my care itself employs, that to preserve which me destroys, constrains not only to endure diseases, but what's worse, the cure, am ready off to port to gain, am shipwrecked into health again.
But physic yet could never reach the maladies thou me dost teach, whom first the cramp of hope does tear, and then the palsy shakes affair. The pestilence of love does heat, or hatred's hidden ulcer eat. Joy's cheerful madness does perplex, or sorrow's other madness vex, which knowledge forces me to know, and memory will not forgo, what but a soul could have the wit to build me up for sin so fit. So architects do square and hew green trees that in the forest grew.
Looking at the title, A Dialogue Between the Soul and the Body, right off the bat we can tell that this is going to be a poem about the soul talking to the body. Throughout the poem, the rhyme scheme is a couplet, which means it rhymes 2 lines in a row, like raise, ways, stands, hands. Manacled right here means chained up and bounded, and that fits this poem because the soul is talking about how it's manacled. In the last few lines of this stanza, the soul is talking about how it feels like it is chained up and it is trapped because of the body's mistakes. In this first line, the body is talking about how it wants away from the bounds of the soul. The body is talking about how it feels like it cannot rest because the soul is uneasy and causing it a lot of anxiety. Pine here means to suffer with longing, and so that fits in because the soul is talking about how it is suffering because of the body's grief. In this line, disease is but what's worse, the cure, he's talking about how he does not want to be cured from any disease that he could get, and that the soul basically wants to die. And this line, and ready of the port to gain, am shipwrecked into health again. This is talking about how he wants the ship to go down and he wants his life to end, but somehow it doesn't happen and he has his health again. Maladies means a disease or an ailment. In this line, the body builds up a little hope, and when it goes away, it gets scared. In these 2 lines, it shows how sad he is because he's confused about joy and annoyed at his sorrows. In these several lines, the body talks about how he cannot forget what's haunting him and it's just scaring him more and more. In this last line, trees are representing life and health, so when the architects are cutting it down, this represents his life being cut down out of his control. This whole poem has a lyrical and morose tone.
There are 2 speakers, the soul and body. Their voice is the voice that's being heard. And the soul and body have different points of view and think that the source of their problems is each other. The soul and body are constantly in conflict with each other about who causes all of the sadness and distress in their lives. The situation that prompted this writing is that Marvell is ill and having major distress and anxiety about his illness. He is having trouble accepting this situation, and his soul and body are trying to resolve the dispute that's happening. The audience is the author, Andrew Marvell, and it can be assumed that he is the audience because his illness prompted the dialogue between the soul and body, and the soul and body are not only talking to each other, they are talking to Marvell because it is his soul and body that are talking. The purpose is to show how his distress because of this situation is a result of the conflict between his body and soul, and the goal is to show this to the reader so that they can understand it and hopefully not suffer from it. His message is that the way to solve this internal conflict is to have the body and the soul come to a resolution, and he conveys this by showing how he is still in conflict because he has not reached this resolution between body and soul. The topic of this poem is anxiety and struggle to accept one's own condition. It has the idea that the source of this is conflict between the soul and body. The author presents this subject directly with a dialogue between the soul and the body, and even labels when the soul is speaking and when the body is. The author has a pessimistic attitude that nothing will change and is emotional about the topic. He is morose and depressed. The solemn diction, violent and painful imagery, and long-flowing syntax reflects the morose tone. The tone is also lyrical because the author is expressing his inner feelings, is very emotional, as well as the poem is full of images and is song-like because of the couplets. If I read this aloud, I would sound terrified and distraught to sound sad and lost.
No joke, they pain. Oh baby, quoi, keep it spreading.